Hi, everybody, and thank you for coming to Mr. Walter Around the World. I really hope that you're having a great time today and enjoying this Friday afternoon. We're going to be traveling around the world like we do every afternoon and just kind of enjoying ourselves, moving from place to place. So, we had a really interesting show just with Mr. Adam, and thank you, Mr. Adam, for everything. And I really hope that you get. Hi, Janet. Thank you for being here with us. We have a great program today. We're going to be reading our ABCs, but we're going to be reading them from space. So it's a really interesting program today since we're going to be finding everything, the ABCs, and all through the alphabet, but finding them expressed in nature. So we will be able to see the A's, B's, C's all the way throughout the alphabet, and we'll see them from space and how naturally all these things start building in our Earth. So let's get started and let's start, kind of just start wandering around, and we're gonna start exploring. And before we do that, we're gonna just kind of go like every day where we start from. We're going to start from our offices, some New Minds here in Dallas, Texas. So as we stop the world right in front, then my camera is kind of up here because I want to make sure that we can read both left and right. So let me just zoom in to our offices in here in Dallas, Texas. So as we fly right in this Friday afternoon, we'll be able to see like every day we start way up from a bird's eye view from our offices in New Minds in Richmond. And I'm just going to let the map turn around so we can actually go and land like every day on our basketball court. So we'll see if we can just land directly right at the basketball court, and I think it's right there. So let's see if I got it. We'll see right there. See if I got the basketball court. Oh, we got the front door. So this is the front door of our building in Hexa, and where we, the New Minds inspirators, and the rest of the New Minds crew get together to talk a little bit about what we're going to be bringing to you live every day. I hope that you've been following some of our STEAM programs like STEAM in Espanol, as well as Mr. Adams with Into the Dungeonverse. This is Mr. Walter with Around the World, and we are here. And there's a trusty basketball court here in Texas. So let's kind of move out of the world and we'll see quickly where we are. So we are here. This is 75 in Texas, in Plano, Texas, and we will be moving from here and we'll start looking around the world to the ABCs. So we're just going to move right over and we'll start reading the ABCs from space. So thank you to NASA, not only taking pictures of our different places in geography around the world, but also being able to put this together for us so we can start reading. So the first letter in the alphabet, A, we're just going to fly right down, So what kind of things start with the letter A, here in our world? So we have Antarctica, we have the Arctic, we have the acid rain, atmosphere, aerosols, all these things. But one of the great things is the state adjacent, which is the state of Arizona. So in Arizona, here it is, the letter A that we're starting with. As you can see, a naturally forming rock formation throughout the canyons, and it builds the first letter of the alphabet A. So imagine trying to find throughout the world each letter as the astronauts and the telescopes are able to bring this, incredible view. So this is the first letter. The astronauts captured, the photograph of Utah's kind of green river just moving throughout. and also features the bow knot bend, which is, you know, the how just the like a bow tie kind of a bend going right through. And this was in 2014, and just gives us our first letter of the alphabet. So, you know, quickly we can definitely see some of the amazing places and how naturally it starts forming the ABC. So thank you to NASA for bringing us, you know, the first letter of the alphabet. So let's kind of just move to the next, the letter B. So the letter B, bonjour, biomass, Beirut, Barcelona, Brasilia. So, you know, the letter B, and you can actually see it right at the bend. So the letter B from space. I'm sure that playing around with Google will be able to find other letters. And you can see the letter, some of the letter right in front, you know, the letter B. So this was again on 2014. So the land image, so Landsat acquired 8 images of the Arkansas River, and in this Arkansas River, in the Holland Bend, in the wildfire, in the wildlife refuge, you see how it just kind of keeps the full structure of the letter B throughout. You know, this refuge here, the Holland Bend, hosts 100,000 ducks and geese at once. So, you know, it's a refuge here in Arkansas, and it's amazing how we can see from space, we can see the letter B established. So if you ever, you know, if you ever start singing again your A, B, C's like we used to, well, you can say, you know what, you know, we can see all those same letters from space that are in different places in the world. So I think that's kind of pretty neat. So let me just look up and make sure that we have our comments right here. So thank you, Mr. Adam, for being here. Janet, Nikki, Nicole, that it's you're also here. So you have the letter B. So I'll make sure, even though throughout the program, that everybody's first named letter is, so Mr. Adam, we already covered A, so I'm make sure the J for Janet and the N for Nicole, and obviously, you know, the W for Mr. Walter will be able to see. So if you're joining in the chat, hopefully Mr. Ben and Mr. Justin will be able to find the letters of the first name through the NASA telescope. So we'll move to the next letter. Perfect. You know, the big C's. So as we kind of turn around and just see, this is, you know, again, from space, big C, little c, you know, what things begins with C. So we're curving crescents of Carbonate, or we can see CloudSat, Calypso, we can see Columbia as well, some other great, you know, names of countries that start with C, and we can see them from space right here. So the astronauts captured this amazing photograph of the artificial islands that were made in the Bahrain island. This is 2011. So they have all these great pictures of how these, you know, islands were formed, and then now from space you can actually see them. So it's really interesting. Let's get a closer view and see how the islands not only were created, plus all the beautiful bridges that actually made through. So we have several letter C's from space, which can provide, and let's see the full development. There we go. So all the letters, and you can see all the fishes that were also created in a full circle. So an incredible place and incredible development, seeing the letter C from space. So what do you think? You know, it's really interesting, right? And I think it's a really interesting way of coming up with all these things. So when you see things from one perspective and then change it to another perspective, then you can start recognizing some patterns. So today, our activity later today, we are going to just use a little bit of cardboard and a little bit of, you know, a little bit of cardboard again, so we can kind of glue them or just kind of tape them together. But as you can see, I have already made some dots on the cardboard, making a pattern. So we're going to be having a little pattern, and we'll just fill it in. That way we can, if we see it from the side, we'll just see walls, but when we see it from the top, we'll be able to see, another letter. So great. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me this Friday afternoon. Nikki, Adam, Ms. Janet, Mr. Ben. So thank you for coming in and just having a great afternoon this Friday as we start exploring reading the ABCs from space. So we'll move to the next letter, letter D. So this is the image that we started with. This is in Canada. And so what does start with the letter D? And this is a full island, right? So data, deltas, we'll have deforestation, unfortunately, deserts. So all these great names of places and locations and animals as well with the letter D. But we see this in Canada, a full letter D being mapped out as well. So this is the Akimishki Island in James Bay in Canada. This was taken in the year 2000, but definitely we can see the full-fledged island right here. But one of the interesting points as well, not only that it forms the letter D and kind of very pretty, but also when the tides come in and out, you can actually walk from the mainland to the island, since all this area, just the waters kind of recede for a little bit, and you can walk up the beach and head to the island. And then once the tide comes back in, it just kind of fills up with water. So an interesting place here in the Akimishki Island in James Bay in Canada. So that is for our letter D. So as we kind of move along, it's interesting because trying to find these letters and these images from space is very difficult, but I'm glad that NASA put these images together so we can actually build the full alphabet. So let's move along to the next letter, and we'll go to the letter E, which is a little bit more difficult to find, but definitely we'll be able. So what kind of things start with the letter E? Well, Earth, of course, evaporation, exosphere, Egypt, El Nino. So all these things start with the letter E as we see images. And if you can't make it out, it's we can see it right here. So I'll take the full picture, which is rendered, and you can see the right here. The letter E naturally forming and being taken from space. And look at the size of it, right? So even though in our computers the letter seems small, you can see the lakes and you can see the mountains and you can see the mountain range. So this letter kind of just spreads through miles and miles. So this one was also done. This is in Iceland. It was taken in 2015, and you see that it's really interesting how the glacier, it starts kind of melting from the side, and then as the water runs down, it meets at the bottom, and when it meets at the bottom, it starts filling all the side little lakes. But you can definitely see how the formation of the letter E is formed, and we have a great picture from space here in Iceland. So as you know, some of these letters are going to be a little bit more difficult than others, but we will be able to find them in nature, as we've taken images of almost the full Earth, and we'll be able to look around one by one. So tell me in the comments of what do you think. It's an incredible place, an incredible area as well, that as we kind of move along and see this full spread of letters in our beautiful Earth. We'll go to the letter F as we kind of move forward, and we're leaving Iceland's greatest glacier, and we'll move forward for the next letter. The letter F. So what does, what do we see with the letter F? And you can see that the letter F right in front of us, right? So film, faucets, frogs, fossil fuels, faults, France, Fort Collins, Fort Worth, all these things, start with the letter F. And this is another one. This is in Tibet, and this is one of the images that was also taken. Now, some of these images, as they were taken in different time frames, you see them in different colors. But the one that we have for 2014 is definitely shows the surface of a glacier before it has been compressed into ice. So you can see how incredible the glacier that we have in front. Now it was full, and then it was compressed into ice, and you can actually see now the full letter F, as all the rest of the area has been compressed, and you can see the ice that is coming through. So beautiful green as it becomes the full letter, the letter F from space, taking it from Tibet. But I don't know about you, but I think that's also pretty easy, pretty easy to see. However, I think it's also one of the most interesting parts of being able to find letters from from our world. So thanks everybody for joining and watching as we kind of move forward from each one of the letters of the alphabet and finding these letters, reading the ABCs from space. So let's kind of move forward, and a letter which is going to be a little bit more difficult, which is the letter G. So the letter G, and we can see, a full island that is that shape. Little tiny island, the Pinaki Island. So it was captured right in the Pacific Ocean, and you can capture it, you can see, the full letter G from space, the full island as it's had. So what starts with G? Good day, right? Geostation, greenhouse gases, global warming, as well as a lot of places and locations that start with the letter G. So this is one of the grains of sand pretty groomed around the interior and the exterior of this island, and as water comes in, you can see that it forms the interior lagoon, and as it forms the interior lagoon, it gives us a very defined letter G as the water comes in and then leaves from one of the areas, but then kind of provides this full view. So, if we were to find a specific example, and we can go all the way down, and so we can see the full image. Yes, you see the interior lagoon and the letter G as the sand comes in, and then the interior of the lagoon is greens and transparent water. We see that this is full letter taken from space. So it's another place, it was taken in 2001. It was taken by the International Space Station as they just passed through, but what a great defined picture that we have right here. The letter G being from space as we're reading the ABCs as we move along. So we have quite a few other letters, and we'll move forward to the letter H. So as we move to the letter H, what things start with the letter H? And this is also a great picture from one of these landscapes. So haze, hurricanes, we have Hawaii, hydro water, we have hummus, we have all these things that start with the letter H. So in 2014, we acquired this image of the rivers running through colorful ridges in the southwestern, I'm going to pronounce this, Kyrgyzstan. So Kyrgyzstan is, we have all these different rivers that run across, and as they run across and they meet, and the slope of these different valleys provides us with a full letter H. And I'll try to zoom in so we can see it even closer. We can definitely see the letter H popping up in nature as we come in and start reading the ABCs from space. So I think it's really cool to be able to take these images and see them in a different light. You can find, and now if you see a globe of Earth, you can actually pinpoint the A, B, C, D's throughout the full globe, and you can, I think it's a great way of actually seeing the world differently. So we're reading the ABCs from space. We're on letter H. I think the next one, the letter I, is going to be pretty easy to find, but we'll move and see where it's a fully defined letter I. So another full island, but I think, maybe you didn't expect this, but not only does it have the full I, but it has the little dot on top. So we have here in the Andaman Islands the full letter I. So what starts with I? Infrared, isthmuses, Istanbul, intimidating incidents. You have all these things that start with the letter I, but one of these places not only has the full body of the letter, but it has right on top the dot that goes right on top of the I. So we can see the full island and the letter of the letter I. So I think it's really interesting because we could think of just finding the letter I anywhere, in the world. So we could actually try to find it just kind of just an I, just a straight line. But this one's a little bit more unique. A full island and a full set of islands that you can read specifically from the right here, the edge of C, and you'll see the letter I with the dot. So this was taken in 2007, and what happened, it was that there was a massive earthquake near Sumatra in 2004 that kind of broke off this area. So now, we have it separated from the mainland, which happens, quite a bit as these, as the Earth moves from time to time. So let's kind of pull out and see where, the letter I is. So if we turn the world around and we move, you see that yellow dot, which is right there. So here is India. Here's India, and here is right there our letter I being read from space. So let me comment. What do you think? I know that Mr. Adams is here. I know that Nikki's here. Janet is also watching. So thank you coming for joining and being able to read the ABCs from space with me. I think it's a really neat way of seeing our world from a different perspective. So let's kind of move, and we have the first letter of one of our participants. So this is J for Janet, and now we will go and see what a great place that we have here in Australia. So what we have now is not only the landmass, but this letter J comes from the viewpoint underwater. So this is the Trunk Reef near Townsville in Australia, and we have the letter J, but we're reading the letter J as a formation from underwater, and the clear water can be able to read it. So again, you might think that we can find letters just as we have seen formations of trees or maybe a few different other mountain ranges, but no, this is another great example. So what starts with the letter J? Jason, jet streams, Jakarta, Jerusalem, the Johnson Space Station. So in Janet, here it is, your letter J being seen from space, as we see the National Land Imager took pictures of the Turk Reef near Townsville, Australia, and you can see how the clear water, and we can see a full-fledged J all the way up with the period on top. So reading the ABCs from space, which I think it's another great viewpoint of how we can find things that we have familiar within our Earth. So let's keep on moving and see what else that we can start looking, and we will be looking for other letters. So we are now for the letter K. So letter K is a little bit more difficult than most letters. Would have to have those intersecting lines. So we definitely going to see how we can find this that throughout the world. So as we move right and we turn around, we'll go to Canada, and in Canada we see a full-fledged letter K. So what begins with letter K? My last name, Kruger, Mr. Walter, and Nicole as well, Nicole Kruger. We have our letter K. We see that Kinison, Kraborski, we have kelp, we have kettle, we have all these things that start with the letter K. And this point, from a vantage point in Canada, we see the glaciers again as they start moving, and as snow just kind of melts away, we see that they're forming these intricate letters. And this one in particular is interesting because we can see how the glacier just has moved the water in one long stream all the way down, but also we see two other streams as they come back and moving. So what's really interesting is that as the water comes down, it hits this bottom section and then runs to the right, making a full letter K. And this is how it looks when, as it started, and when there is no real snow on the ground. You see how the tracks of mud and the tracks of earth have actually kept a year-long K on top here in Canada. Now the National Park of Pond Inlet in Canada. So really interesting development as it goes. So yes, Mr. Adam, is such a creative way for us to look at our world. It's amazing how the perspective can reveal so many wonders. And as we see it, yes, it's kind of really interesting. So we see definitely the world from one perspective, and normally we actually see the globe and we turn it around. But as we start moving, going deeper into the so many different shades of color, music, culture, and in this case, reading our ABCs from the vantage point of space, we can see this how the world looks completely different. So let me zoom out and kind of turn the world around. And as we turn the world around, you can see how typically we see the world. Here's North America, here's the United States, and we actually were right up here in Canada looking at some of the glaciers and how the intersecting melting snow makes these great letters. So another letter which I think is pretty easy, but we'll see from that vantage point, is the letter L. But again, I think it's very interesting. So this is not any rock formation, or it's actually a full string of lakes. So it's starting with the letter L, lakes, Las Vegas, Landsat. We have all these additional elements, and you can see how even though the mountain range across the way builds and moves throughout, it leaves a full section of a valley to create a perfect letter L here in Argentina. So in 2015, the Landsat took some additional pictures and captured this amazing letter L formed from Lago Poyenco, which is the vertical lake, and the Lago Cochrane, which is the horizontal lake. So the two lakes kind of meet up and have a perfect capital letter L, reading our ABCs from space. Here in the lake is between Chile and Argentina. So incredible place, and we can see as we zoom out, you can still see the letter L all the way from space. So let's take a quicker look of how it looks when it's not so cloudy. A perfect letter L having two lakes vertically and horizontally intersecting, so we can have a great, beautiful picture between Argentina and Chile forming the letter L. So it is, it's like everybody's saying in the chat, it's such an interesting way in how to we can see the world differently. And when you say, "Oh, have you read the ABCs?" You can say, "Yes, I read the ABCs with Mr. Walter, and we read them from space." Like, how did you do that? Well, we kind of looked at different pictures from NASA, and we found every letter in the alphabet that is represented here naturally in our world. So, a very interesting way. So let's move forward. And I think the next letter is also kind of a little bit more difficult, the letter M, because again, it would have intersecting areas. So we are right back down. We are here in the border between Chile and Argentina, and we will move from the letter M, and we'll go see again some of the glaciers as they start, you know, melting away, and how the snow starts finding some great routes towards the valley. Now, what's really interesting about this, because we've seen this before, how the water in the snow melts and finds, but this one in particular is interesting again, because it provides us with an overview of a specific straight the straight letter M with three specific the three specific areas as they come down, three completely straight and vertical pathways. So if you see the top is how this dirt and snow melts away. It goes and melts in one full stream, and then it has two additional streams that to form the letter M from this glacier. So they found this, again, this was in 2015, and what places and things come from the letter M. So we have Miami, Mumbai, Moscow, which we haven't gone, and I say it every day, we haven't gone to Russia, and we will, we will at some point. So the Mediterranean Sea as well. So we see this picture coming from in 2015 from NASA, that it has the Tian Shan Mountains in the northeastern Kyrgyzstan, and it provides a full overview of middle merging glaciers and how they melt to form the letter M. Now, the next letter is going to be a little bit more difficult, I believe, because it's the letter N. And the letter N means that at some point it would have to cross over from two vertical elements and then kind of cross over. So that is going to be another letter which is really interesting. So what's it somebody's job to find these pictures, or did someone write a program to scan the images? No, then Mr. Adam. So as they took these pictures, it was someone's job to actually try to find. So back in 2015, and some of the pictures are way back from even 2001. So they would have to find letters that would match each one. And I think the really interesting point is they had to find it in such a way that we could map it into the world, into Google Earth. So not only the images come from NASA and then they're just wrapped around in Google Earth, but then it's pinpointed to make sure that we have all the great information of where it is and where in the world do we find these letters. So great question, Mr. Adam. We'll move next to the letter N. So a full-fledged letter N coming from Canada, intersecting rivers in a full little N. So what begins with N? Napanee, Mount Ontario, we have Knox, we have near infrared, nimbus clouds, so the Nile as well. So all these N's, letter N, things that actually have and start with the letter N. And we have again this great picture from space. This is in Canada, and this was taken in 2014, and it captures the view of the inland waterways from the north side of Lake Ontario. So if we move out a little bit more, you see that here's Lake Ontario, and as the waterways start flowing towards Lake Ontario in Canada, we find that there's what we were looking for, intersecting waterways that some reach all the way to the lake, but other ones just have this incredible view. the letter N of intersecting waterways, well, I think it's pretty difficult. And we'll take a quick look of how it just matches in one point, then it goes down, then over, and it has these great exit ways of the waterways, forming in small little islands here and great places in Lake Ontario. So we are here looking at the letter N, and we can see where we are. Here's Florida, there's Canada, there's Lake Ontario, and we are actually looking at the letter N from space. So we have a whole bunch of additional letters that we're going to go through, and I'm not sure if we'll get a chance to actually see all of them, but we'll try to make sure that we see some of the most intricate ones. So the letter O, a full ring, I think it's pretty easy that we could find. So we go directly in Mauritania, and definitely one of the most interesting ones, a full letter O from an impact, right, of thermal emissions and ejections. We see that as a satellite captured the image of a meteorite that actually crashed on Earth and struck Earth between 10,000 and 30,000 years ago. So one of another interesting way, because we could find interesting places for the letter O, but what a great point, which is being able to see a full impact of a meteorite that kind of did this 10,000 and 30,000 years ago. So as we move all the way closer, you can see the perfect letter O as the impact crater here from in the African continent in Mauritania. So incredible place of how this impact, and you can see there's nothing around. So a great picture that it gives a very interesting and new way of looking at the world from this picture of 2008. So as Mr. Adam was mentioning, these pictures come from different places, but they'll have to be mapped in and kind of programmed into Google Earth for us to kind of zoom in and be able to see them. So the letter O. Perfect. We'll see then, what another great, it's we'll move forward and kind of look around for the next letter, and which will be the letter P. And this was also, the start of the show, one of the iconic and very interesting, but this is an absolutely perfect letter, as we see from space, as the waterways in Canada form all sorts of different interesting shapes, and we see the full letter P. And what I like about it is not only do we see from the top all the way to the bottom and the full loop, and what begins with P, plumes, plates, as we see pearls, Paris. So all these things kind of just start with the letter P, and these waterways have actually built in. And we'll see this is a drier season, and you see how we can actually see the mud, but when we see the full scale, and now with all the brighter colors that we can enhance, we'll be able to see the full letter P that is here in the waterways of Canada. So it is absolutely gigantic, as it's you've been able to see it from space, and you actually see how big that is. So let's see, and we're gonna zoom in as much as we can. Okay, so let's take a quick look just to gauge the scale. These little stick figures that we see in front are fully grown pine trees. So this could be anywhere between 50 to 60 feet high, and they just look like a little dash. And as we move forward and move out, you can actually see the size of it. So we can definitely understand how interesting it is to see this, because we couldn't see this with the naked eye. We couldn't see, we just go out and be able to see this full letter. it only can be done and could only be done from space, as we see this full letter P in the waterways here in Canada. So here we are, all the way to the top. All right, so let's move to one of the most interesting letters in the alphabet, the letter Q, and see if we can find a full letter Q. And this is one of my favorite in India. And it is actually, again, what starts with the letter Q? QuickBooks, QuickScat, Quakes, Quicksand, Quakes, well, the milk with chocolate, which absolutely love as well. So we can see as well here from India, reading the ABCs from space from the letter Q. And what is interesting is as we move down, you can see not only the full circle, but you can see the exit area of just the side area of the letter Q. So it's another perfect example of how all these letters we can find within the full area of our world. So let's take a closer picture, and you can actually see it once it's fully enhanced, and you can highlight the area around the Q with the colors of green that has all the greenery. As we enhance it, you actually can see a full immersive, completely colored letter Q here in India. So this was taken again in 2004. It came from different places, but NASA kind of brought it together from the Terra satellites, and it gives us a full image of the lunar crater in India. It had shocked quartz, so that means that it's just very compact minerals that of unusual structure that can only be formed under intense pressure, which is quartz, obviously. And it offers a clue that the lake was formed by a large impact of a meteorite as well. So as a meteor just hit the Earth, it has this great impact because it shocked the quartz, and it provides this full look of our letter Q from space. So what a great way of actually understanding and learning from one another from the vantage point of space. All right, so we will move to one of my favorite letters, the letter R. And we will go all the way across the way back to Argentina. And if you can see the letter R, it's a combination of different lakes. So it's a lowercase r that we have. So what starts with the letter R? Radios, Rome, radiation, reflection, all these things start with the letter R. And then we found one huge letter R here in Argentina as different lakes start kind of combine together into having these. So this is Lago Menendez in Argentina, and it has a full lowercase r, as we can see, just to show you the magnitude of this lake. And we'll go all the way down so we can see at the waterfront. So we'll see so this is a tree, a little tree right at the edge of Lake Lago Menendez, and we'll kind of zoom out so you can see, how amazingly huge this is. So we can see it from space, the letter R found here in Argentina. Incredible. So we'll move along and we'll do a few more letters, and then we'll tell a little bit more about the other places. So we'll go to the letter S, which actually coming right through. And this time we go all the way to South Africa, across the way, and we see a full snake-like river that actually comes right in. So what starts with letter S, where a snaking river in southwestern Africa. So it has sulfates, sunlight, sunscreens, all these things starts with the letter S. And we see that this was taken in 2017, and is of the Orange River on the border between Nambia and South Africa. And I think what's really interesting is that yes, you have a winding river, and we know that this is going to take, but this one has, you know, two of them, one against each other. So you have a full perfect S, and then you have another one right underneath it. So the chances are of trying to find two S's, one and another right after another, very, very difficult. So thank you to NASA to actually being finding this great example of the letter S in South Africa, in between those two countries, Namibia and South Africa. So this is the image of the Orange River right at the border of those two countries. So incredible. As we move out, we see where in the world have we found that S. So we found it right at the edge of the African continent. Here we go. The letter T is coming up. So the letter T, we find, you know, the United Arab Emirates. So we have a great picture reading the ABCs from space. So we have the letter T. So what begins with T's? Tomatoes. That's the first, you know, typhoons, thunderstorms. We have other things that start with the letter T, and we have a full picture from space that gives us the image of the development that is going along two roads, and you see how both the developments starts and provides the top section of the full development against the sun-swept desert that we have, and then you have the full length that is actually moving through, and you see the size of the letter, right? A full letter T from the United Arab Emirates. So it's an incredible another point of how we start finding letters from different places. And what's really interesting about, I think, about this picture is how the top section, and let's zoom out, it has all the dunes. So you see all the dunes that are happening right through, and just gives you a full range of how the dunes are being made, and a letter T of the development that happens right here in the United Arab Emirates. So an incredible section right here. The letter U, I think it's easy. I think it's we'll be able to find that ready available in the world. So it's actually right next door in Egypt. And what's really interesting about this image is the Nile River make this perfectly made U across the desert. So it passes right through Kenya and Egypt, and the 2000 and in October 2000, the Mapper Plus, the Landsat 7, actually captured this image and was actually being able to render it so we can actually see it. And let's take a quick look of what it looks like as the Nile River winds its way, and then it just fertilizes the full area alongside. And not only, it's really interesting, not only the river, because we can see that the river kind of winds, but you can see the importance of it as all the green area are just along right beside the desert, just how much life that the Nile River brings to this area. So a beautiful picture of the letter U as we come closer and move past. So we'll move again and see, thank you, Janet. It's actually pretty cool to actually be looking around and being able to see these in different places from space. So we'll kind of move along, and we'll be able to kind of just see the next letter. So the next letter that we are going to see is the letter V, which I think is pretty easy as well. So we'll have, but what happens is that in this one, we have a big V and a little V. And what words around geography start with the letter V? Well, we have Venezuela, we have Venice, we have Valencia. So we have great places that start with the letter V. So let's, kind of move down all the way, and we can see the full letter V created right on the side, as we can see two waterways actually moving it, and just perfect, and almost a fully stand-alone area. So we see this is in the New South Wales in Australia, and it's the Lake Cataract, which has the two intersecting areas. So we have the waterway that comes from the left and the right, and then they just move into a perfect letter V here in Australia. So an incredible place of reading our ABCs from space, and we can definitely zoom in to take a quick look of how huge this letter is. So we'll go all the way down to the beach, right to the side, and we can make out, the rock formations. So if you take a quick look of this rock formation that's probably over 100 feet tall, we kind of move out, and you see the size of Lake Cataract here in Australia. My favorite letter, W for Mr. Walter. Reading the ABCs from space is coming up. W. So as we move, we'll go all the way to Turkey, and we'll see the letter, my first name, and you can make it out a W, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So naturally appearing W right on Turkey. So it has, we have different names and letters. So definitely Washington, water, Warsaw, wavelengths, weathering, Mr. Walter. Yeah, it's another letter. So W being read from space. We're here in Turkey, and it's an image of a lake that created, by a dam. So we can see that the letter was created as two waterways were coming in, and then the dam was placed on top, and it created one of the most difficult letters in the alphabet, W, especially being able to try to find one in nature, but there it is. The letter W, actually from here, from Turkey. We'll go quickly, because we only have a few more minutes. We'll go to the letter X. So the letter X, we have X-rays, we have excellent, we have the X-Men that we went yesterday. We'll see the two, this is in Greenland, and we see, again, just intersecting melting glaciers that form a perfect X. And this is what they look like. And you can see how the sides of the mountains and the mountain ranges and the glaciers kind of bring the snow, and as it melts, it does a perfect intersection. So this is not man-made, this is completely natural, and we'll see the letter X being formed in nature. We're almost at the end of the alphabet, and we'll go to the letter Y, and we'll go back to Namibia, and we will see the letter Y as we have intersecting. And what I like about this picture is just how colorful it is, and we can see the perfect intersection of two winding rivers in a full huge Y from seeing it from space. And as we kind of go way in, we can actually see the trees, and we'll see, you go to that little cropping right there. So we see the trees right here in the letter Y in Namibia, and we see how amazing it looks all the way through. The letter Y from space. And finally, we'll go to the letter Z. We'll go to South Africa, and we'll finish our tour around the world as intersecting rock formations in Zambia, Zimbabwe, and we'll see how this rock formation captured in Port Elizabeth in South Africa just has that intersecting lines to form the Z's that we can see all the way from space. So, an incredible journey, letter A to all the way to letter Z, reading the ABCs from space, an amazing rendering of all these pictures to thank you to NASA for bringing them together and Google Earth for placing them for us to be able to do. We did not get a chance to do our activity, but we will be able to do that on this coming up week. So let me just end with thank you for being here. Thank you for being with Mr. Walter around the world. I'm Mr. Walter, and just thank you for tuning in to real inspired learning for all. And remember, if you have a passion, just pursue that passion and it will become your talent. So one of my passions is actually being a game master, and Mr. Adam and I would run games at all different times, and we're running games from Dungeons and Dragons and all sorts of games, and I have a bunch of games, so we'll be sending you options for you to join us and play around online with all sorts of games in the coming up future. Also coming up, we have the steam train is coming up in 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, we'll have Mr. Dorian with the steam train, and then we'll have at 4 o'clock from the Numi Vault, we have Mr. Ben with classic puzzles and brain twisters, and we'll see as well. And at 5, we'll have the closing messages and announcements, and this is for parents. So I am finishing off the Mr. Walter Around the World for this week. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be exploring the world in the future. So thank you for joining me, and have a great rest of the day.